Now, I'm going to come back to my story. This happens to be my cousin and I. And I told you I started writing first to relieve the pressure of how was I going to come out. And so I wrote my coming out story over a number of years. And it actually was entitled Barely Queer. And that's because some of you may know I don't have any problem taking my clothes off. So I was sort of...
Let's do that
now. Which is probably why you say, well, why did he write in Naked magazine? But the reality was that it was easier for me to be in the presence of beautiful men if you were, like they were, unclothed. So anyway, that's where the title comes from. But I started my story originally telling, this is where we did this is what happened to me. But then I went back and said, no, that's not very interesting. Not even to me it's not interesting. So I started out the Barely Queer story, which is my coming out story. It's just for me. I haven't shared it with anybody, by the way, except my former wife who found it and read it. And that led to our separation, which was fine. It was about all ready to happen anyway. But anyway, it started out, the Burgundy Hudson. Hudson is a car for those young people here who don't know what that is. The Burgundy Hudson maneuvered around the ruts and gently navigated the limestone outcroppings that pushed up in the tire tracks leading to Sowers Lake. Jim Sowers was a good friend of mine. The Hudson finally came to a rest under a large tree. We got out with our swimming suits in hand. We got ready to change. Mr. Sowers said, "You don't need those." "Why?" was Tom's accusatory response, Tom being the older brother. And the father said, "We're swimming naked. It's only us." And that was the first time I'd ever been outside without clothes on. And you know what? I decided I liked that. And so anyway, that's where the title came from. It goes on and talks about, and we all have had myriad of experiences that you could write about. And some of them you said, who would really care? Or I'm embarrassed to tell somebody how I did that night. I don't want anyone to ever know. Well, that may be true. On the other hand, it is something you know. It is something that you could write about. And I think we're pretty much to the end of my presentation, except for one. As I said, I was very, very fortunate. And one kind of writing I do primarily just to remember are the travelogues. And in the year 2000, with a Cuban fellow I met in Montreal at a club similar to the one you went to the other night, and we became friends. And that's really what we became, was friends. And he offered to take me to Cuba. And it was truly, this was now 9 years ago, I wrote about that trip. And again, there you do have to say a little bit of we did this, we did that, because if you didn't, you wouldn't remember. But we were staying at the Riviera Hotel, and we walked literally across the street by the Riviera Hotel. Probably hadn't changed in 30 years. It looks exactly like the automobiles you see pictured in Cuba. And I said we then set off with a walk along the Malecon, the famous walkway across from the hotel, where the waves, the way the wall is sloped up, the waves come crashing up, and often when the sea is stormy, they'll be 20 and 30 feet in the air. It's spectacular to see. And then the Malecon, I say, stretches on for 4 or 5 miles. And that's also easy to do. If you spend half an hour on any day when you're out traveling, and then you go back and read it and say, well, there was more to it than that. Now, let me embellish it. Let me describe how I felt about what I see. That didn't happen in this case. But that's the kind of thing that I do. That's what this writing, this writer is telling you who might think about wanting to write. I don't write every day. Some people do. I go in sort of spurts. I tend to do that more as my winter activity as opposed. And I think that one of the things I'd like to leave everybody with, and then hopefully, did anyone bring anything to read to us? Would they like to read to anything? That was your assignment. I'm so sorry that no one took me up on the assignment. But the idea was of the seminar was to encourage you, and one of the reasons that Scott very kindly offered to video this is that I think there's some fantastic stories, particularly stories we haven't heard from Asian men about their stories. And I think that the idea of talking about this, it's not hard to write. You simply get out a piece of paper and a pencil, or you get at your keyboard and you start. And it's that easy. And don't be self-critical. Oh, I don't know how to do that. What would somebody think of this? I think we're trying to say it's a very legitimate art form. Just as when an angel dances and sings, you know, and at the botanical garden yesterday we saw the phrase that the plants are the slowest art form, which I thought was a great line. We have to wait for them. So, but does anyone have any questions, or anyone like to ask? Angel?
I had some thoughts to share, I guess, because I actually do some writing.
You want to come up here so that Scott can hear? You mind? Or I can come?
I actually have something I can read.
Okay, good. Good, good, good.
Blah, 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 blah.
And if it goes on more than an hour, I'll cut you off. Yeah. I'm going to have to. I have to stand beside you. You can just.
Okay. I'll talk into your microphone. And so when I was, yeah, he doesn't have any clothes on for me.
For this academy.
Well, what I wanted to share quickly was that I wrote a column for Gay Chicago, which is a magazine in Chicago, for about 4 years. Very erotic, sexy stuff that I would do. My first column was Big Dicks, Little Dicks, you know, talk about stuff like that. And in terms of sharing what I've written, I didn't bring anything to share. But I do remember one line that I'm so wedded to, and I always think about it. It was a story about, because I started writing, I became kind of a little celebrity, this tall. And a priest wrote to the magazine and said, "Oh, who is this guy? I want to meet him, whatever." And I'm thinking, okay, well, whatever, I'll meet him. And it turned into a column called "Date with a Priest." And he actually talked about the fact that he had a partner and they would go around. He was a Catholic priest, so it was kind of this, you know, oh my God. So at the end of it, he did like give me a kiss, which turned out to be not like, oh hi, I just met you. He was like, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't expect that. And then he gave me this little block of wood that I thought was a little maze, because it had it was like a chocolate bar, like a dark chocolate wood, and then it had light pieces of light, like bamboo or wood, that looked like a maze. So it looked like you put a little marble here and you made the maze go around. And the last line of my little column was, because it's one of those, it was like negative space. So you weren't supposed to look at the white, you're supposed to look at the negative space. And when you looked at the negative space, you saw it spelled Jesus. So the last line was, if you look hard enough, you could see Jesus.
Ah, very nice, thank you.
Well, the other thing I do have is, no, go ahead.
No, you need to, yeah, I just was keeping close to you.
The other thing I do have, I've been, for some reason, like he said, like John said, I do think there are stories out there. And I started to interview gay Asian men in Chicago. I probably interviewed about 10 of them. So what John was saying about write what you know, I think I kind of went out on a mission a little bit and started to interview people on camera. And one of the Southeast Asian guys, I had the notes from that. And just to kind of read quickly, he said, he's probably in his 40s, he said, "I see myself lately more and more less typical, looking more like a typical Indian, gaining weight, being less hip, but it has less value how other people look at me. I'm in a phase of life, I'm just interested in what is underneath all that, what a person is made up of. In Nashville, he met a man. On one hand, to him, he looked hideous, but he was funny and educated, and I think that's where he thinks the Asian community, we judge what we look like in Southeast Asian. It's skin color plays a role, lighter or darker, and so that, again, those are some of the things that I've been uncovering.
Okay. So